Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to today's podcast. Thank you very much for being here. We once again have a client that has agreed so kindly to be interviewed. So George and Annaliese Walker are in Minnesota, and they have a lot going on. So we are going to unpack everything that they have going on, how they're utilizing their policies, which I'm very excited about because George reports to me at least weekly or every other week with something that I should listen to or something that he's doing. And it's awesome. I love it. So if you are a client and you are listening to a podcast you think I should listen to, do what George does. You guys should all have like little rubber bands on your wrist that say, do what George does, and send something to Mary Jo. He's like my unofficial researcher. So thank you very much, George and Annaliese, for being here. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, you have a lot going on. So can you just tell us what it is that you guys all do?
Okay. Well, on one hand, we farm with family, with my parents and my brother. We have Walker Farms LLC. So that is a direct to consumer meat enterprise. So we raise beef, pork, lamb, chicken. We used to do turkeys. We don't do turkeys this year. Anything else? Butter. We actually wholesale butter for a small creamery. So we raise the animals outside of the butter. And we have an on-farm store. We've done some farmers markets this year, which is a new thing because we were asked by some retiring folks to do it. We do online sales through Gray's Cart, which a lot of people are familiar with. So that's that part. And then we also have a custom harvesting entity under that umbrella that my brother kind of runs. So we do combining just locally, very local. We're not going from Texas to Canada. We're just staying within about 30 miles of where we're at. We do some custom harvesting. Let's see. And then this year we've started a new entity that's not under the umbrella of Walker Farms. It's under a new umbrella that's Walking Old Land and Livestock, where Annaliese and I, with my parents actually, have been doing sell-by cattle marketing, which is kind of popularized by Wally Olson, Doug Ferguson, and folks like that. It's actually Bud Williams is the gentleman who came up with that. He's passed away now, but so I went to a school last December with Doug Ferguson and learned about that, and we're still learning. So we're on our second turn right now of that enterprise, and that's super exciting where that could go.
We're going to talk about it. I'm excited to learn. I'm going to learn with everybody. Because I think it's exciting.
What else we got going on?
And we also have stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, outside of being a supportive body within Walker Farms and Walking Old Land and Livestock, I also am a contractor for Maya Grazing. So I support farmers and ranchers in the United States and Canada predominantly in making data-driven grazing decisions. I teach them how to use the program. I help them pull out their data, and then so that they can do better at planning for drought and sort of a lot of that risk management that comes along with the dynamics of managing land, livestock, and cash flow. Although I do stay away from a lot of the finances side of it because that's not really part of the program. When we're not working on that, I also do a lot of like legislation and policy initiatives through the Minnesota Farmers Union. I've been taking a little bit of a like mini hiatus from that in recent months. So I did a lot of stuff around food policy, and so have taken, like I said, a little hiatus in recent months. So I might kick back into that in 2023 or something like that. So
you guys don't sleep.
We do. We go to bed at like 8:30 at night. We're sort of lame.
That's what happens when you get old. So let me ask this. What can you expand on? I have so many clients that do direct to consumer marketing. Can you expand on that? How you got started, what that looks like now, what you have found to work? I know, Annaliese, you are an amazing marketer and you are constantly taking pictures and sharing information, which is so super important. But so how did you guys get started to kind of where it is today?
So I started doing it many years, well, 20 some years ago. I actually farmed in Wisconsin. I went to college in Wisconsin, ended up staying there. I wanted to move back to the farm. At the time, there was no place here. They couldn't afford, and it's gone through some changes. So I ended up farming in Wisconsin for about 17 years. And at that time, I did the kind of the same thing, only I did it more of a CSA model.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a subscription-based model, which was a nice model to work with. When we moved back here, now we're pushing on 7 years, but we combined forces with my brother who had moved back to the home farm before that. And he was doing direct-to-consumer poultry and pork. And then we came back and added the beef and lamb over time back, because that's what I was doing in Wisconsin. And so now we don't do any subscription-based stuff like the CSA model, but we've just morphed it into the direct-to-consumer as far as the Grace Cart online. So we had direct to the door-to-door delivery that was set up actually before 2020, which ended up being a very good thing for us. When that hit, we had a meeting, I think it was in January, and planned the whole year out, with our butcher dates and sales dates. And when that hit in March, we was at 6 or 8 weeks, we sold out. I mean, we were out of almost everything.
We were putting caps on like what people could order, and we're reaching out to like pre-pandemic customers saying like, hey, we're having a run on things because people in the Twin Cities are running out of food because of the food shortages. So like, we want you to be able to go in and shop and get ahead of it, even if you're not going to pick it up for a month. Like, we'll hold it for you on good faith type situation. And sort of with a direct to consumer brand, really what you're relying upon is that trust, right? So having that relationship, they're not just buying a T-bone steak, they're buying that relationship with you, and that feeling that like, I see you, I value you, and sort of that dollar has more of an intrinsic value beyond its monetary value. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of that.
So dude, were you then how did you get through 2020 being short of meat? Were you buying meat from other growers that you knew were raising the way you wanted?
No, we ended up kind of like say putting the caps on some things to make sure we had some supply. We had already at that time, our butcher, we would do all of our butcher dates, into January for the whole year. So we had our slots there. We already had the animals already prepared or planned, but they weren't finished yet.
Right.
And so as time went on, we were able to kind of catch up. We're still not caught up, really, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. So that means that was my next question. So if you haven't caught up, that means you have retained a lot of those new customers. And because that's the biggest thing. Right, Annaliese, that I see, and I'm sure you guys see that too, that so many people had a good run in 2020, 2021, direct to consumer. But if they didn't do the marketing and they're not retaining the client service, well, we're just going to go back to the grocery store because the meat is there and it's no big deal.
Right. So a lot of people are driven by convenience, but insofar as like from a business aspect of the different things that you're going to be tracking, one of them is lifetime consumer value. So you can look at that as like from when they first started buying from you to now, or you can look at it as like a rolling, in the last 365 days, these people have spent this much. And so you're constantly wanting to achieve a certain threshold. So In any business, there's going to be a certain amount of what we call churn. So a turnover rate of somebody, like they move to North Dakota, they die, like, or, something happens, or they find a farmer that's even more local. There is always like we shoot for maybe a 20% churn rate. And that's fairly low, but that's our goal. And part of that is the relationship building and putting a number on that, so that you can measure, are you being successful at reducing some of that risk that's associated with just dealing with people, is pretty huge. The other side of it is looking at is increasing your average order volume. So by pulling that lever, if you can increase your average order volume, and sort of like, even if you're decreasing the number of orders you're shipping out, you're increasing the value per order, you can typically gross and net more because you're doing less labor for a greater amount of financial gain.
And how are you doing that? I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry. How are you guys accomplishing that?
The measurement or
no, so let's just note that George and Annaliese know their numbers, and this is so important. We were just talking about this before we started recording, that they know their numbers and they are tracking what they're doing, and that is important because it's a business. But I guess what I'm asking is, how are you getting people to order more and increase that volume so you don't have as many clients?
That's a great question. So, over about a 16-month span, I started tracking, because we had some areas that were monthly, some areas that were biweekly. All of them were free order delivery. And so the numbers that I was looking at was average order value and then gross revenue per mile. And so, if I'm gonna like drive somewhere to deliver something, it needs to make sense. And so it was very consistent that our monthly average order volumes were twice that of our biweekly, which makes sense. But overall, they were still ordering the same amount per month. So in a situation, we were bumping up against what we could do from a labor standpoint. And so we ended up just putting a hard and fast, like, hey, we can't deliver to your home for less than $200. Like, if you want home delivery, order this amount. If you want to order less, that's absolutely fine. Just come to the farm to pick it up yourself. And so we do have an on-site farm store that is contactless, appointment free. They can do self-checkout. We always tell them, like, we have the quick convenience cuts in there. So like chicken breast, we're out of ground beef, but like a lot of those convenient cuts are in there. But if you want something specific, like a turkey or a brisket or something like that, order online for in-store pickup. You can still come whenever you get the order packed notification. But it gives them that flexibility of if they need to do a lower order value, they can still get the food that they want. It just doesn't, it helps us be more financially stable.
Oh my God, so many questions. So how are they checking out in the store on their own? You guys have,
yes,
like it's just open, it's behind a locker. Like, I just had this Zoom meeting with all you clients about the vending machines. Were you guys on that? I didn't see.
No.
I did see that, the recording. I didn't. We've looked into the vending machines. Actually, I've been in contact with a company down by Chicago. The cost of the machines that they were dealing with, now that's only one specific one, was far too high, because it's actually the way they were doing it, like what Jason Mock is doing. It's actually more labor intensive than I thought. Just to keep that full.
Yeah.
So I was thinking more of like a vending machine, like the old soda machines, where you just put the inventory in there and they press the button and it does, and then
that's how this one works.
Yeah, I haven't looked into those ones yet. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So how is your store work?
So the way that our store works is we have order checkout form. So you just write in like your first name, last name, email address, phone number, what city and state you're from. And then you say what items you took, how many items, and then what the cost per pound was. If it's a unique weight, they self total it up. and then they can check cash or card, and they put it in a lockbox that's like literally attached to the frame of the building. So it would be, and it's right in our front yard. So, if somebody wants to be spicy and try and steal something, like we have 3 dogs, and so it's a really convenient option, especially like we have a lot of people on Saturday mornings that'll just like pop through, grab their groceries early, and then they're done for the week.
Yeah, you should offer a coffee. You should have a little espresso machine there. So when they come get their food, because they probably went and got their coffee and then they came and got their meat.
A really good friend that George went to college with, or high school with, she owns the local coffee corner. So we'll leave that to them for now.
I want an ice cream machine there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did you know my client's Joshua Citrus in Florida? They have an ice cream machine. They have a soft serve, and it is their number one money maker in their store, because they have a store you can come in and buy their orange juice and stuff. It is nonstop busy with ice cream. Yeah. So that's
I think it would work. It's
next year.
Sometime in the
that is such a good idea. So how often now is this store ever open just randomly? Hey, because I've seen on Facebook before that something about the store. So is the store ever open that you're welcoming people for the weekend, or you have specials or something going on as well then to get people out there, or is it just purely convenience?
It's pretty much just convenience right now. So it's 24/7. We have a lot of people that shop with us that are like nurses, police officers, firefighters. Our George's brother Andy is a firefighter. So like we have connections to that community. And so they work really strange hours. And so having that convenience of like whenever, is really the driving factor. There's not a ton of we don't run a ton of specials in the store just because math is hard sometimes. So if it's like 10% off, well, how do I calculate 10% off? Like a lot of people, it's so automated in everybody's day-to-day experience that to expect someone to be able to do that on the fly. It should be simple, but sometimes it's not. So we just don't do it.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about creating, because Annaliese, you are such a good marketer. Let's talk about creating like your labels and your packaging. And I don't ask this question a lot, but you guys have the logo. Like you are professional 100% across the board. Did you start that way, or did you just work into it as, oh, hey, George, you were going to start this 20 years ago. I'm just going to work into this, and oh yeah, now I'm successful. I should probably have that logo and have the website and all that stuff.
When I was in Wisconsin, I wasn't as quote unquote professional as we are now. It was a little bit more, but there's a timeline in that, when I started doing that, the internet was, I still had dial-up. So that wasn't it was a different marketing deal then.
So old.
Yeah, we're not that far apart, I don't think.
No,
so
we're not.
Yeah. So it was a different, and I ended up having a good clientele, and it was kind of a word of mouth deal. When we moved back here and combined everything, it was more, and plus you're trying to, you got more people involved, more people part of the pie, you got to spread out. And actually, my brother's wife came up with our logo that we have now. She put that together, and it's kind of stuck, and we have some variations of it. So that's where that started. And then but we were trying at the time to really push it off, to be, quote unquote legitimate business. Farming is a business, and you have to be on top of those things. Not to say that it's all, hunky-dory all the time. I mean, we have our struggles. We're still, you say, well, you guys know your numbers. We do, but we struggle with it. We actually have just recently brought on John Haskell to help us do some stuff, and we're just trying to really dial it in, to know that.
But you should be like, it's no different than I have coaches right? I have mentors that I work with. You have to constantly be learning. Before we got on, we talked about the person that's selling eggs for $2.50, and they're not making any money. So no, they're not, because they're not running it like a business. So yes, I can go get eggs for $2.50 because they're not running it like a business. But if you're a business, and those people aren't on every street corner either. So, and they're not necessarily as convenient as you are. So I may have to pay a little bit more for the free delivery, because my gosh, if Annaliese is going to drive 30, 40 miles, like there should, with gas, $6, $7 a gallon, you can't just expect that to continually be free. And the people that don't understand that aren't running a business.
Well, and I think on the flip side is the consumers have to understand that as well. And so that's where that communication does come into play of, explaining, like, because when we decided to switch to monthly with a $200 threshold, hard and fast, like that was a very big decision that was not taken lightly. And so, I mean, there were conversations that were had with longtime customers. Hey, what do you think about this? These are the implications. These are the supporting reasons as to why we're making this decision. And it was a very holistic decision. It wasn't just numbers. It was mental health. It was, there's going to be construction in Elk River that is just going to destroy our delivery times. There's some other implications beyond just this, like, we're, money grubbing farmers, right? And so, having that essentially beta testing communication stage of, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. This is the reasons why. Would you still buy from us? I mean, it really comes down to that, and they were all unanimously supportive, and so we used that exact same messaging as we went public with it and said, hey, we're making these decisions because family health, mental health, like, just economic concerns, we have to make this sustainable. And if we're not taking care of ourselves and our family, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So, and we're not going to be here if
So
we can't take care of those things.
Exactly. And that it is a business. And so, and businesses make changes. It has, some people just don't get that, but I like that you've talked to everybody. So it wasn't just, or most people, right? To see what your feedback was going to be. We don't just make that decision and not include them because they're like part of the family. It is still a small business. All right. Well, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was gonna say, we add, as far as that goes, we had some friends that were doing, that helped raise my brother and I, go to our church, everything. And they were doing direct to consumer pork and beef. And because of some illness and age and stuff, they decided to retire. Well, they were very concerned about what's going to happen to their customer base that they've had for years and years and years. They actually approached us. Would you buy our market trailer and, we'll start sending customers your way and do it that way. This was going to a farmer's market, was not on our radar. So this year we got that trailer, we rebranded it, and we started going to just the local farmer's market for the most part, and started building relationships there. We give a card out, people, because the farmer's market's done now. The last one was last weekend. We've been giving a card out all summer that has directions to our store, and started driving people that direction. We're very curious to see how that's going to go, because the store traffic has gone up just because of that, because it's actually more convenient than the farmer's market. But we're thinking that people are going to go that direction, even if we're not. Now the farmer's market goes to once a month indoors rather than what it normally is. And we've been able to use that trailer to do pop-up markets at breweries. That's breweries. And then we have a pizza farm that does wood-fired pizzas that we go to. Some friends of ours, they buy meat from us, but then we do that. And then we have a brewery that we actually get all of their spent grains from their brewing process, which reminds me, I need to go get that. But we'll do a pop-up there once every other month or so, because they do a meat raffle. So they'll raffle our meat off, and then we are out there selling as well. And that trailer has made that, because it's plug and play. You plug one plug in and it's all the freezers in there. There's 3 freezers in there are going. Your package is ready to go when you come home. You can plug it right back in, and it just makes everything so much easier.
So tell me about that. What is that? Did you find that it was beneficial? It was a good purchase? It was a good move?
Absolutely a good move, especially sometimes we think just because we know people like you and we're on social media and everybody knows who you are. Well, in our hometown, it's just 7 miles away. There's people who didn't even know we existed. They didn't know we had a farm store that they could go to right out of, there's a housing developments, not, just around us. Some of those folks didn't even know we were here, and we're just here. So that was really interesting, learning, kind of an eye-opening thing to say, whoa, you still have to work at this because people don't know you're there.
So what was it like? Essentially, you bought that trailer, but you also bought their clientele. Did you see a lot of those clients come over? Because a lot of people want to build organically. They say, you know what, it's not worth it for me to buy somebody's business because I can just take those clients anyway. But can you?
So from a proximity standpoint, I think we did have a bunch change over. We did not acquire a customer list. We didn't get data. We didn't get.
Okay.
So we did in the essence of purchasing a business, I would say no. We didn't purchase a business. We purchased infrastructure.
Okay.
And they actively referred people to us so that they could make the decision as a consumer. We didn't buy their information. And I don't know that they actually tracked it, to be honest, because they're more the dial-up approach.
Yeah.
So, which is, for better or worse, it is what it is. That's just, it worked great for them. So
yeah, they were older, you said. So they didn't want all the new stuff. This is what they did. It worked for them. That's great. But you got a trailer and did something you would have not done. And it drove you guys to make a little bit of a change that obviously helped the bottom line. And you got new clients, people that lived in the neighborhood that didn't even know you were there. It is crazy, isn't it? Like,
yep.
I have friends on my personal Facebook page that I posted something about the markets crashing and they're like, what do you do? Like, I've done this for 12 years. I've written 2 books. What do? I want to say, where have you been? But it's crazy that you don't, you just assume that people know, but that doesn't, how would they know? If that's not what they were looking for at that moment, they're not going to know.
Well, and it kind of also, because of just how search engines are structured and what type of data it presents to different consumers based on pre-existing, how they interact online, there's absolutely zero guarantee that they're going to see your business at all. So if you're really looking at leveraging your local, your actual local community, you're going to have to look at a lot more of the old school, air quotes, old school marketing techniques of I'm going to do a postcard campaign. I'm going to put an ad in my local paper. I'm going to sponsor my basketball team. Sometimes social media is a fantastic tool, but it is at the end of the day, it is just a tool. And so you have to find the appropriate tool for your end goal. And so I think a lot of people, just generally speaking, or a lot of businesses don't start with a goal in mind. And so if you don't have your initial goal, how do you measure your progress?
Yeah.
So those are, that's sort of really the foundation of beginning your marketing, is identifying your goal and who you are so that you know how to talk to people and attract who would be interested in your business.
Right. And a lot of, I've had my marketing people on and they've said, there's no reason to put a lot of money into Facebook or social media ads locally because it doesn't maximize locally. So you are going to have the benefit of going back to that old school stuff locally? Where are these people? Where are they looking? Is it word of mouth? Can you give referral discounts? What can you do creatively so people talk about it? And, people aren't going to talk about money. Like it is rare for me to have a referral from a client because we're not going to talk about money, but we're going to talk about food, right? Oh my gosh, we just ate the best steak ever. And this is where it came from. I mean, we're going to post that stuff on social media, right? Like that is a big food people will talk about. So you're really in an industry that you can take advantage of all those things. You don't necessarily need to pay Facebook to do it.
No, well, and there's other tools on Facebook. So Facebook is a giant in and of itself, but within social media, you have different things like groups. So be careful, like proceed with caution. There are going to be local groups in your area that you can post to that are going to be like receptive and say, oh, hey, shop local. Like if you have a local sell by page, local garage sale pages. We in the state of Minnesota have a fantastic group called Minnesota Farm Direct. Or Farm Direct Minnesota, one of the two, that was set up during the pandemic to try and connect people with local food sources due to like meat shortages. And so like that supply chain issue really drove consumer behavior change. It was really up to the farmers though to maintain that relationship beyond the scope of a world changing pandemic, right? So, I mean, social media does have things available. You just have to figure out how to use them.
You have to physically go on and make that little post in that group though. And so it takes time to do that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Well, and she's always getting on Andy and I because we're out doing chores or doing something. Take pictures. I don't care. We're always, because we're out there. We do this stuff every day. Why does anybody care?
Right.
If I'm moving a chicken pen, or I'm moving cows or whatever it is, and
as they do, George.
No, they do.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't there's that little that sound on reels that's like, I'm a small business owner, so everything is content. Like everything is content. So I don't care if you're going out and you're gonna like boop a pig nose, like that will probably be like, go viral because people don't get to boop pig noses every day.
I know. Isn't that crazy? It is. My husband sells Will Crafts, an ice house thing. And I'm like, did you take a picture of that guy with that guy buying that house? He's like, no, I forgot. If you're gonna go fishing, you better have your camera out. And he just is the same. He thinks the exact same way. Why would that be content? Who cares that I'm out here fishing? It's the fact that you're out there, and it's just how social media works.
Well, and I think making social media work for you, like how do you create content? Like batching is really popular, especially with like the influencer community. So they'll go out and they'll spend an entire day just taking pictures. And they'll have, and granted, it's usually like very outfit and style and lifestyle driven. For us, it's livestock, it's plants, it's whatever. And the thing is if you spend maybe even like 2 hours walking around your farm and taking pictures of all the stuff that you would assume that, people have never seen before, or that you think are cool, or they look pretty, like you can use that content for years to come. I'm still using pictures that I took in like 2016, 2017. On our social media because they're there and that's what we would call evergreen. So it's forever usable.
Yeah. And people need to think about that stuff, and they need to do it. Like if your direct to consumer business is not being successful, what are you not doing on a daily basis? I'm like, you can't post once a month and think that that's going to be okay. It has to be constant.
Okay. And people don't, you hear people talking about it, I'm just gonna go direct to consumer and that's gonna make it work out.
Yeah.
Let's be real here. If Annaliese wasn't here doing this, we would not be doing this the way we're doing, because that is not my wheelhouse at all. I want to go out and be with my cows. I am pretty stereotypical that way. I can move cows all day, build fence, but doing that part of it And the constant part of it is a struggle. So you need to either hire somebody or marry somebody.
Yes, that's exactly what I tell people. I'm like, if you're, 'cause not all wives are Annalise's, right? So not all wives want to be doing those posts either. It is crazy how many couples I talk to. The wife wants to be outside. She is the one that wants to be, she's the George of the group, right? And I'm like, then he needs to be making the posts. And if both of you want to be outside, because a lot of times that's the case, they both want to be outside. They both know, but they don't want to talk to anybody. Then maybe you need to hire somebody to do it, or better yet, why don't you go find a George and Annalise to sell your product to? Because they've been successful. They need the animals to sell. And if you guys can agree on, hey, this is what we want them fed with, we don't want any antibiotics, whatever it is that you're doing in your operation, if somebody can agree to feed them and raise them that way, then what a great relationship, because not everybody is meant to deal with customers. I personally cannot go sit at a farm to market thing on the weekend and deal with, like, I am not going to deal with people. Like, me doing a farm show, trying to sell my book takes every ounce of energy, because you get people that think that they know everything and they make all these comments, and my personality is just to, not necessarily to fight, but just to slap you right back in the face. Like, you want a stupid comment, I'm just going to reply with the stupid comment. And so it's not for everybody, right? There are introverts that don't want to be sitting there. So it takes a lot of money to start a direct to consumer business. If you want to skip the sale barn, go find a George and an Annalise and say, hey, will you buy our meat? And you can market it and sell it as your own, and we will grow it for you and be done. Like, there are multiple ways to do this. You don't have to do it all like everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, and to go back to when you kind of touched on a good thing, the sale barn thing, and with the sell by marketing, that actually opens up some huge opportunities without having to do the direct to consumer. There again, though, you have to know your numbers. You have to know what it costs to put a pound of gain on an animal, whether it's a lamb or a steer or a heifer or whatever. There are opportunities there, but you have to go get continuing education. You got to go to a school. You got to talk to people who are doing that. I mean, we're still learning that, but to me, I see a lot of opportunities there.
Okay, so George, that was my next question I was trying to get to. What is sell by? Can you explain? I tell people all the time about it and nobody has heard about it. And I am so super surprised. I mean, I hadn't heard about it till a couple of years ago. So can you just, in a real quick, explain?
Real quick. Well, what it basically is so you have an inventory of, we'll just say with cattle, that's what we're doing with it. You have an inventory of cattle and you sell a group that is overvalued. And then that can mean a lot of things. To be overvalued, it has to be compared to something else. So one set of cattle could be overvalued to another set and undervalued to another set. In your local market, you kind of have to figure that out. So if we have a group of calves that are overvalued, we sell them wherever, we sell them mainly at a local place. It's about 50 miles north of here. Then you replace your inventory, you buy back undervalued animals. That sounds simple or confusing, however you're looking at it, once you kind of learn what that means. So you buy back, so you replace your inventory with undervalued animals, and then you have a time factor. And it might be 2 weeks, it might be 3 months. It's typically more around like 90 days or so. Those groups of animals will at some point, it just works this way, become overvalued to another set of animals. So when you see that in the market, okay, these group right now, we're building another group of heifers. So when these heifers become overvalued, we will sell those heifers and then we will buy back whatever is undervalued against them. Now, We don't know what that'll be. The way we're watching now, I'm thinking it's going to be late bred cows. We don't know. But when that time comes, we will buy them back. But you actually make your money on the buyback, not on the sell. The beauty is when you sell that group of animals, you know 100% what it cost you to produce those animals. And we throw them through what they call a cattle square. And I'm not going to get into that. You'd have to go to a school for that. It will tell us what we can afford to buy back and make a profit. And we put in a 25% profit margin in our calculation. Now, if the market is really tight, which it could be, we can back that off to 20 or 15, but we are writing in a profit right off the bat. So we know we're going to make a profit. And this group that we sold this fall in September, this group of steers, we had wrote in a 25% profit. We went to the auction and it was scary because they didn't gain very well, but the market came to us and we made a 34% profit on that group of cattle on our buyback. Right now, we're doing our buyback now and we have bought under our budget on every heifer that we've bought. Now you're buying in some higher risk cattle. We did lose one, but that goes right on our cost of gain for the next group. So the next group that will be figured in and we will know what we can buy back at. So that's a confusing way of doing it, and we're still learning. But
it's not a buy and hold. It's not a,
no.
hey, so what we see in the cattle industry a lot is I need to buy Angus, purebred Angus, and then I'm going to hold them and then I'm going to fall in love with them and I'm going to name them. And we're never going to get rid of them because they're purebreds and they've got all this great pedigree, right? And we struggle to make a profit. And what I like about the sell by is it doesn't matter what we're buying or selling. It's what is going to make a profit. Because again, we're running a business for a profit. And if there's a method to it, that just makes it that much not easy, but it makes it easier to track the profit because you've got a method instead of just, oh, what's the pedigree? Can I go buy that $300,000 string of semen? It just that is not where we're necessarily making the cash.
When it's knowing your numbers, and then as Doug and Wally are pounding all the time when I talk to them, is trusting your numbers. When we sold that first group, it gave us what we build a barn card. So you know what you can pay for each weight of cattle. So when they come up, you can figure out what's undervalued and you know exactly what you're going to pay. We have right now an extremely strong barn card, which made me go, there's no way that these numbers are right. No way. And I ran them upside down and backwards. I got a friend not too far from you, Cody Koloji, that he does a lot of this, and we're always bantering back and forth. I send him my numbers. I said, just go over these. I had to have made a mistake somewhere, and we haven't at this point. So we know exactly what we can pay for it.
That's crazy. And so then the question becomes, and I know the answer, but what are you using your cash value for in your policies?
Well, there you go. We're buying cattle. So to give that story, so Mary Jo, for those, we met, I had a friend of ours, dairy farms just north of us here, about 10 miles, had contacted me and gave me your book back in the day. And I read it and we contacted each other. This is when I lived in Wisconsin. I was all for it. And I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it. And it scared me. I'll admit it was scary because we were talking some bigger numbers and I had different cash flows then. It was a different deal. And so and then life had some pretty major changes between then and now, and kind of put it offside, and we revisited it. And I kicked myself for not doing it then, because the position we'd be in now is just, I try not to even think about it because it would have been crazy. But so then we went down and we re-met, and now Annaliese and I are married and doing this. And we obviously are doing the IBC now. So initially we used our policy, we built it for a year. We didn't really use anything for a year. And then after that, we made money. Funny thing, you have to pay taxes if you make money. So we ended up using it to pay some taxes, paid it back. And then we got into this sell by marketing, and it gave us an opportunity to pull from our cash value to buy cattle. And that's what we have done with it. So we can pull from our cash value. We borrow, as you always say, keyword there, we borrow against. And we've used that to buy these cattle. And yes, we pay interest on that loan, but we're paying it back so fast. The interest is, I haven't done the final figure on it, but it's pretty low. But we're also making the 25%. So add that on top of it because of the opportunity costs. And I don't have a bank. We do use, we're not that, our policies aren't that big yet. We have 3. So we're still using, we're blessed to have a really good banker who gets what we're doing. I send him all kinds of podcasts and so he understands what we're doing. He's very supportive, very helpful. So we are still tag teaming it with that, but currently the group that we have, that's all with IBC right now. And we own those cattle. So that's how we're using it at this point in time.
And here's the thing with sell by that I've run into with everybody I've talked to, and I haven't talked to a ton of people with sell by. Hopefully after this we have more of them going to Wally's school, but it is the banker does not understand it. And so I've run into a couple of people that they're like, I have to cash flow it myself and I got to figure out how to do that because the banker won't. They just don't get it. It is not traditional. The collateral is an issue because you're only going to have them for 90 days and you bought them underweight. And now if we got to stick weight on them, it's not like the banker has a grain bin full of grain that they can stick weight on these cattle. And so when they go to sell them, their collateral is not there. So rightfully so, the banker has an issue. But if the banker's not willing to learn or the bank isn't willing to learn, because even your banker is not the one making the decisions. And so if the bank, the board of the bank, if they're not willing to learn and trust, you're not going to have the ability to have that cash flow. But you're either going to pay, even with the policy, you're paying interest, but you're going to pay interest either to the life insurance company, you're going to pay interest to the banker, you're going to give up that interest. So ultimately that piece does not matter. But
that's what people get hung up on.
I forgot that we talked when you were in Wisconsin. I totally forgot about that till you mentioned that. That's why I thought your policies were older. Because
that's probably why. Yeah.
That's forever.
Yeah. No, I should have done it then. And if anybody's listening to this that's on the fence, don't wait. Get after it because this is a long-term play. But even now, so we're going to go into, I forget, we're going to do our 4th pay premium here this spring, I think. And it's starting to build steam, and that's something that we'd like to grow ours now. We'd like to, okay, how can we run more? Nelson says ultimately your income should equal your premium. Okay, we're a long ways from that, and that should take 20 years, let's say. Okay, well, what steps do we need to take to start moving towards that? And in our case, we have some wiggle room. We have Annaliese, who we haven't totally used policy-wise, so we have some things that we need to look into, but that's where we're going now, because now I understand more what I didn't understand 8 years ago, what he meant by that. And now you see how that works and how you use that, and that money is not tied up. It is there and meant to be used. And really the way the concept works is it needs to be used in a not maybe used necessarily for buying toys, but for doing something that cash flows, that is a profitable endeavor.
Right.
And it is so powerful. We were at a deal the other night, and a bunch of friends of ours, we get together on Thursday night, sometimes from church, and everybody there was retired except us. Retired, some of them are still odd jobbing. A friend of ours, he just retired, sold the restaurant in town, or a cafe, which is super sad, but he's 71 years old. Everybody there was talking about their 401ks and their retirement, and they were, well, I lost $100,000 and blah blah blah, and all these folks are 65 plus. Oh, it'll come back, it'll come back. And Annaliese and I are sitting there, we looked at each other and we're thinking, our policies have been making money the whole time, plus the cattle are gaining weight. Yeah. And people still think you're crazy because they're still hung up on the idea that you have to pay interest on your own money, which technically you're not, but that's how they see it.
Right.
And explaining that is pert near impossible, but we just kind of giggled. We didn't go down the road. We're like, whatever.
It's a choose your battles type situation.
Exactly. And that is why a lot of people don't share it, is because you get that feedback and they just want to argue with you about it instead of being open-minded. But I think that everybody listening just needs to really, really listen to what George is saying, and the fact that he's listening to podcasts, he's sharing it with his banker, he's sharing stuff with me. He is not only educating himself nonstop, going to schools. Annaliese is doing the same thing, right? You guys are constantly listening to stuff and then sharing it to help educate all the people helping you and around you. So many people aren't even, well, it won't be people on this podcast because they're listening to this. But so many people that you're trying to share it with don't even know what podcasts are. They don't do anything except listen to the radio so that they can get all ticked off and pick their side of the political spectrum. I mean, that is what it's come down to. Shut the darn radio off and start listening to stuff that can educate you and create wealth. And I mean, I just found another new podcast this morning. I was listening to Robert Kiyosaki, and he was interviewing a guy, and I was like, ooh, I've never heard of that guy before, and he's got some good stuff to say on this podcast, so I'll go check him out and see what he's got to say. But I'm constantly listening to stuff. That is, George, that is why you understand infinite banking, is because you keep listening to my podcast and you're listening to James's, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just Mary Jo's podcast, it's other IBC stuff. And then occasionally I may get a question that says, well, they said this, what does that mean? Right? That's what I'm here for. But we have to educate ourselves. Because
I think how exciting is it that we live in a time where education is so easily attainable?
Right.
I mean, it is, with the podcast and sort of like the whole podcast culture, I would say, because it is sort of a subset of a culture in and of itself. You can get information on just about any topic that you need or want to get information on. And so there really is no reason why people can't get that, barring that they don't have a technology device to support them in that endeavor. Like, really, most people should be able to access this information. It's just a matter of educating themselves.
And you can get it on, I mean, almost everybody has a computer, right? So you can get it on your phone. I have a lot of people that listen to it on their computer. I'm like, who does that? Like, I would not think that, but they're going to watch this on YouTube, or they're going to get my email and they're going to watch it through my email because I'll be like, hey, I didn't get your podcast this week or whatever. I'm like, and it ended up in their spam. I'm like, you guys really go through that email I send out? I would have never thought, because I have my podcast app. I have also found that, and I didn't know this existed, Annaliese, is that you can, on podcasts, you can listen to like murder mystery, ghost stories, funny stuff. I'm like,
who does that?
I'm addicted. If I'm driving, I want something that's entertaining. Like, I think part of, for better or for worse, a lot of what I do is just number crunching. And so by the end of the day, like, most of my brain cells that I can afford have been fully spent, and sometimes to a deficit. And so, like, I do need things that are entertaining, that can sort of refill my cup. So yeah, like lore or true crime or like, yeah, or stories.
I
Like, yeah,
did not know this existed. And I'm
love
like,
it.
why would you listen to that? I would want to see
Yeah.
that. I wouldn't want to listen to it, but I'm surely not going to listen to anything true crime, because then I'm going to drink at night and somebody's going to try to kill me. Like, no, no. Remember when, well, Annaliese, you're pretty young, but do you remember when Unsolved Mysteries was on, George? Like, do you remember
She
that?
would know that, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
That I hated that show. We would watch it all the time. And I always thought, well, if somebody's going to hide somewhere, it would be our farm. Why would you not? Like, every single criminal was on our farm, hiding in the barn or something, because there were keys and everything. Nothing was ever locked up. And so I would go outside and pump the sewer, because we didn't have a sewer that automatically flowed or whatever you call. We didn't have. I had to plug the pump in. And I have a brother that's 11 months older than me, and he will go hide and scare the bejesus out of me. And I am like terrified of that stuff. Any criminal is going to come right after me, just so you guys know.
So it's so funny because like my path was like, oh, that's so weird that people's brains work that way. And then I got really addicted to like researching abnormal psychology. So like as a 12, 15-year-old, I'm like in the library looking at psychology books, and like I'm pretty sure that the librarian was like, this kid has some major issues, or is, psycho or whatever, So yeah, I just think people are fascinating generally.
I don't listen to a lot. I'm more of a nonfiction person, but no, on the note of back to the steers and IBC. So we had an opportunity this year, because we actually on accident got involved with it last year. We live right down the road from a 36,000 acre national wildlife refuge. And they have a cattle grazing program out there that's some friends of ours do. Well, we actually did most of the management of that this year. We bought, some of our steers were out on that. We have a lease on almost 10,000 acres out there. Anyway, we have to move fences every day. And my job, the boys would come and put up fences for like 5 days, and then I would move cows, or Annaliese would move cows, and we would take the fence down. Well, people hide out in the refuge. We know that. It's a known thing. Well, I was out in a way back area that nobody should be out at except us. And I come around the corner, and here's this little hut that somebody obviously took the time to build. And so I carry when I'm out there now.
Oh my God.
I'm not worried about the bears, but nobody was there. But I don't think they'd been there for a long time. But you think, wow, I can't listen to scary stuff like that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get my job done.
Right. I don't like that stuff at all. Okay, so we've covered everything today. Is there anything else that you guys would like to share, have a comment on, that we have not discussed? Advice for anybody?
On the IBC side, it's what are you waiting for? I mean, if anybody wanted to, I am totally open. If you want my phone number, if you want to say, if you think, well, is this Mary Jo gal, is she legit, or is she just a scammer? I can tell you right now that she's not a scammer. She won't pester you. She should probably, but she won't.
No, I won't.
And, yeah, it's, to us, it's a blessing, and we're still in the beginning of this. I get super excited when I sit down and kind of project, which maybe you may or may not, should or should not do. But where this could be when we're 65, we don't plan to retire ever, but we'll own, a substantial herd of cattle, whether, in the sell by or whether it's direct, whatever it is. And we'll have this IBC to help go into that time, where maybe we'll start transitioning to younger folks. We don't know what that looks like yet. And get started though. It is wonderful.
Okay, so I want to touch on that just a little bit, because I like what you said there, transition to younger folks, because you guys don't have children.
No, we're
Not
working on
currently.
trying to adopt, and that's a
Okay.
whole
Oh,
nother
well,
thing.
that's exciting, but
Yeah,
but could be painful at the
Yeah.
same rate.
and spicy.
Spicy.
Right. I've talked to others in that scenario. It can be hard. So, but let's say that we don't. It sounds like you still though have a transition plan in your head that just because so many people that don't have kids think, oh well, I don't have to worry about it. But somebody else wants to get in. And so you guys are already thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, yeah, it goes back to just maybe a value set of like, we get to take nothing with us when we depart. So, having a plan to transfer what we've built to the next generation, whatever that might look like, even if it's outside of the family or it's in the family or, it gets bought out or, it just really depends. It's, the initial goal is to build a life where we get to decide how we spend that time and then be able to help the next generation also be able to build a life where they get to spend their time in a way that feeds them.
And I think people need to understand, and Wally Olson would be a good one to talk to about this because he's doing that transition. He's in his 70s now. Just because you're transitioning, it doesn't mean that you're not part of it per se. I envision it that, yeah, this young person's not going to have the capital to go out and buy all these cattle. But at that time, and Lord willing, I am physically active until I tip over and at 100 or whatever. But let's be realistic. At that time, you're going to need that young ambition, that muscle, that, doing some of the day-to-day stuff. I might not want to wrestle with calves or whatever at that point in time, but they probably won't have the capital or may not have the capital. Well, if we work together, nobody's saying I have to quit. Right. It's just the role changes. I can still, what do you love about this? I love walking through my cows and moving my cows. I can do that. And I can get help.
Jolene Brown said it best, and she's like, the problem is you, or not Jolene Brown, Val Farmer he's I don't know, he's like probably 85 now, but he said the problem is farmers don't have hobbies and they identify as the farmer. And so when you take them out of that role, now they don't know who they are anymore because that's all they've ever done. And so now you go from the farmer to the mentor, and you are mentoring that young person, and there's still meaning there. And you then get to retire and enjoy the fruits of your labor. And they don't, like, they're not seeing that, right? They think it's being taken away from them. They're being undermined. Like it is a beautiful thing. You just have to embrace that, because that is why you worked. And that is why that transition happens. And that transition, really, if you want to be out at 65 and out, I know some farmers that they want to be done by 65, 70. That transition then should be happening from 55 to 60. So you have a good 10 years of mentoring somebody to get them where they need to be, because it doesn't happen overnight. You don't get to just say, hey, I'm going to sell and good luck to you. That is not how that works. And so transition out of that also gives you time to adjust to your new role.
So I think that was one thing. So we went to Ranching for Profit in February of 2022, and they specifically have an entire section that's dedicated to like the peopling of business. And one of the things that they do touch on is succession planning and or like roles and effectiveness areas. And so how do you have those conversations about, mom and pop want to retire, but they're scared to retire because they are white knuckling the reins on the business. And so it's okay, you can transition out of that role of, having having that like bracing control over everything and start delegating that responsibility slowly but surely, and allowing the next generation to acquire a taste and a knowledge for the different roles that they're going to have to fill. Because as a small business owner, no matter what industry you're in, you have to wear several hats, and to like throw all of the hats onto a single person at one time like that is a sink or swim situation that's not really necessarily fair to anyone. And so again, like speaking from the Anything for Profit side, if you can say, hey, mom and dad, what do you want to delegate? What doesn't bring you joy? Can you teach me to do those roles? Because at some point you're going to have to throw your shoulder into it and learn those skills and or hire it out. And what does that look like? And at least have those hard conversations. There's actually a book called Crucial Conversations, very good, for how do you navigate those types of situations, because they can be very emotional.
Yeah.
So.
And you have to do it. You have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, I am literally out of time. So
Same.
Otherwise we'd be here for like 2 days. So this is an extremely long podcast, obviously. So I hope that you guys have hung in there to the end. If you have, thank you very much. I appreciate you listening. Again, thank you, George and Annaliese, for sharing. If people need George's information, you can go to Walker Farms. What's your website?
Walker Farms LLC. If you go to the Walker Farms like social media, you'll hit me. So, but I can pass you on to George. So yeah.
Or you guys, as always, you can just email, text, call me, whatever, and I will pass George's information along to you too. Because I am guessing that if you are a client, you're probably not going to have IBC questions for George. You are going to talk to him about sell by, about direct to consumer stuff. And so that is typically what happens, is other clients will reach out to you guys and ask questions about what you're doing. So if you're willing to share that information too, you guys can just contact them there. If you want to talk to them about IBC or whatever, let me know if you need their information. But thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and make sure you thank your team, Tara and Jess. They're awesome.
I know, aren't they? They're fantastic. I love them. All right, you guys, as always, if you need anything, questions, comments, concerns, let me know. MaryJo@withoutthebank.com. If you need to get the book and you have not got Nelson's book, go to farmingwithoutthebank.com and grab it there. All right, thanks, and have a great rest of your day.